Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. It's the day most people have been waiting for. Creative Assembly have provided us with the patch notes for the upcoming update known as the Hammers and Herdstones update. We're going to be going over anything of interest, and keep in mind that by the time that this releases, the video might be out before the blog is, as sometimes the Creative Assembly website, the Total War one, is a little slow, so I will update the description in this video when it actually comes out. There's not too much to talk about during the intro, except of course that when this comes out you might have a few issues with your current campaigns. So if you want to finish off any campaigns, especially any modded ones as they might be unstable now, you'll need to go into your Steam's library, go into the betas tab, and go for the following beta. Warhammer II_1.11.1. However, if you're looking just to play with the new Legendary Lords or with all the new quality of life updates, you don't need to do this. But let's not waste any more time now and get into all the details that Creative Assembly have released. First and foremost, you might notice that when you play as the vampire counts, the Sylvania faction, you will notice a new hero is available at the start. This is in loving memory of Kevin Lloyd, a QA functionality tester for Creative Assembly, who unfortunately has passed away, so they're immortalizing him in the game. We were told about this previously, but I felt it'd be best to wait until Creative Assembly made an official announcement regarding this. The character himself will have his own special traits, which I'll let you go and discover for yourself. This is a lovely initiative by Creative Assembly to immortalize someone in this way. Next, we'll move on to a shout out from Creative Assembly to a lot of talented modders. Many of these had worked on modded versions of these units that we're seeing in the release of the DLC. All of the modders here in question are very talented. I've covered a lot of their work here before, and it's nice to see them getting some recognition. Personally, I'm a big fan of Drunk Flamingo, Chaos Robbie, Mixu, Vandy, and so many others. It's great to see them getting recognition for their absolute talented work. There's a bunch of information regarding the Beastmen rework, which we've covered extensively on the channel, so we won't stay much here, but as you can tell, there is a lot of different changes and the Beastmen play radically different now. Many people have been hoping that the Beastmen be brought to a certain standard, and with a decent amount of time playing this new DLC and of course the new update, I feel like Creative Assembly have finally made the Beastmen as interesting as they can be and give them a reason for people to play. One thing I do want to note here is of course the character and faction effects, where the three legendary lords that we had in the past, Kazrak the One-Eyed, Malagor and Morgur, now act very differently even with their basic faction effects. Now, each of the legendary lords will act like legendary lords, whereas before they were pretty much just basic standard lords with a unique skin. The dwarves are getting their own rework when it comes to this patch too, which was absolutely unexpected. Grudges have been radically changed, where now they will be more progressive, and you can actually use this to your own advantage, and giving you an overall more sense of progression, which is absolutely fantastic. Not only that, but Wandering Slayers will come into effect where you'll be able to recruit them as pseudo regiments of renown. By this I mean that you'll be able to recruit them instantly, and there will be factors that come into effect, meaning that sometimes you'll get more and sometimes you'll get less. Legendary grudges are also coming into effect for all the legendary lords, meaning that now they'll all have their own sense of progression, and not only that, but your campaigns will feel a tad more thematic as each of them are dedicated to their own lore. New post-battle options have come into effect for the dwarfs, which is actually really interesting. So now when you fight different races and factions, you'll have different options in the post-battle screen. When fighting against dwarfs, you'll be able to ransom them for oath gold, provide a provincial buff, or even take on the captives for replenishment. When fighting against hated races, greenskins, vampire counts, Skaven, chaos, and so on, you'll be able to execute them for oath gold or provide a provincial buff. When fighting against not so hated races, these are generally those that you might ally with, you will be either able to ransom them for oath gold or drink to victory and get a provincial buff. VIKRAM has perhaps the biggest changes when it comes to character and faction effects tweaks, as they've made his provincial commandments much more powerful. You can see them all on screen right now, and this is to make VIKRAM feel like the true High King of all the dwarfs. This is something that was desperately needed back in the day, and finally Creative Assembly have addressed that. There's a few other changes right here, but nothing too massive. Now let's move on to Runecrafting. Now Runecrafting has been getting a bit of an overhaul here, with many new character and banner runes being added to the game through, of course, the Runecrafting system. Now you'll have a bit more variety when building up your armies and your characters, and being able to tailor different forces to different things. Dwarf characters will also have dedicated rune slots, so it doesn't affect any of their actual equipment slots. The great thing about this is it's more of a harkening back to the tabletop days. If you remember the rune system back in 8th edition or prior editions, you will feel at home here, as it's a nice tribute to that. Rune magic has also received a quite massive overhaul, being now more of a lore of magic in a sense. Of course, it's a bit different as you don't use winds of magic and they share cooldowns, but the idea is to give the dwarves something more akin to a standard lore of magic. Not only this, but once again harkening back to the tabletop days, these runes can now be converted to master runes by means of the standard overcasting system. They'll become much more powerful, but require a longer cooldown. Some campaign changes have come to effect, and we'll look over them briefly. The Beastmen really haven't received too much in terms of trait changes, as of course most of it was just removing the stuff revolving around upkeep, as obviously the Beastmen have no upkeep anymore. The dwarfs had some minor changes in regards to the technology tree, where a bunch of stuff was buffed up and a few things were changed over. This actually helps quite a bit, as now you can get more diplomacy with the dwarfs, you can also get a few Lord Recruit rank extra, but most importantly, at least in my opinion, you can now have improved gyrocopter engines which allow firing whilst moving. This was desperately needed, and I'm glad it's finally made an appearance. Buildings have been reworked for the chains and unit positions to allow for more unit variety and easier access to hero recruitment, and 2 new landmark buildings have been added in, the Lost Underway Junction and Ironbrow's weapon shops. I'll let you discover them for yourself, but it's nice to see that the dwarfs did get quite a nice change here. Lizardmen changes are quite interesting in all honesty. New technology effects have been added in which grant all skink units poison attacks and vanguard deployment. Skinks will also be easier to level up, as they have the quick learner trait, which is actually quite good, as of course skinks tend to not be used much as soon as you're going to be able to recruit sauruses, so now you might have more of an incentive to use them. There's also been a reshuffle of certain units, like for example the Saurus are now only available at tier 2 where they used to be tier 1, Bastillodon and Pterodon riders though are available at tier 2 where they used to be available at tier 3. Norsca had a reshuffle of their units, we've already covered this before, but now it's more focused around being able to build up different varieties, so you're not just stuck with the same armies over and over. Beastmen of course did receive some other changes, like for example Malagor is able to fly now. This is the first flying legendary lord that we're going to have in the Warhammer series, and it is a very welcome change. Feral manticores are also now recruitable by the Beastmen in both campaign and battle. Quite nice, I hear that it was very much requested for multiplayer too. And perhaps one of the biggest highlights regarding these patch notes, which many people have been asking for, is unit cards have been redone, not just for the recent DLC, of course the Twisted and Twilight, but also the Ward and the Paunch. They're brought up to a very high new standard, and I think people are going to really appreciate this. They look absolutely fantastic, and you can tell that a lot of work has been put into it, so well done to the Creative Assembly art team. Honestly, it's so good, I can't wait to see what they have planned for future unit cards. Passive abilities now have a recharge display, meaning that you'll be able to keep an eye on what needs to be recharged in engaged in melee or whatever the actual requirements are for said ability. It's a very welcome change, as now you'll be able to track stuff much better. The perfect example of this would be with the Black Coach, as you need to keep it in combat to be able to recharge its passive abilities, so now you'll know, oh, you can keep it in for 10 more seconds, it will recharge, and then you know when the next buff will come into effect. There's also been a change with ability active and recharge display, so now when it is green, as you can see in the image here, that means that the spell in question is active, whether it is a damage over time spell or anything like that. But if there is a red line going through the dial, that means that it's recharging, so there's no effect actually happening, it's just on its cooldown. It may sound like a small change, but at least now you'll know when your spell is active or not. Precursor missile weapons have been changed, although this only applies to the chameleon stalkers right now, which is fairly interesting, but I guess they're working this as a test mode. It stands as if fire at will is enabled, they'll be able to skirmish better and will automatically fire at any unit that comes within its radius. This is what is expected most times. However, if fire at will is disabled, the unit will only fire at the target that is explicitly ordered to attack, and will only use the precursor missile weapon when charging, meaning that it needs to get within its charge distance. Chariots have been given a bit of a buff when it comes to collision. This is likely a hint towards the future, as we're expecting the Slaneshi forces to be very chariot heavy. Spells and abilities in regards to movement speed have been nerfed significantly as they felt a bit too powerful, and it does make a lot of sense here. Some of them were just a bit too punishing, especially the higher tier casting values, and it just made it a lot more difficult to actually work around this. Resistance buffs and negative effects have also been nerfed ever so slightly in an effort to keep things a bit more balanced. There is a lot of stuff in regards to unit balancing, and I will have a link in the description below if you wish to check it out yourself. This mostly affects very minor changes or some major changes in regards to multiplayer. I'm not much of a multiplayer person myself, so I wouldn't really be the best person to explain this to. There have been some overall bug fixes which you can see outlined on the screen. Now, the biggest one I'd say is the issue where you could have infinite winds of magic. That seems to be removed now. I tested it myself and I haven't really seen it being used. So if this is now permanently gone, that's a good thing, as it could break your campaigns. It was very exploitative, and unfortunately it could also be used in multiplayer combat, so it's good to see that gone. The competitive players must be very happy now at the very least. There's also been some changes to campaign where certain issues would arise with, say for example, army reinforcement lines now show on the campaign map a little better. This was an issue where they were disappearing or just not showing up whatsoever, and the growth requirements being updated to what they should be in very large and legendary settlements. It's nice to see these being fixed up, as they were lower than normal for some reason. It looks like a bunch of quality of life changes have come into effect, and if you want to read over this more, I do imagine that I'll have the patch notes linked in the description below at least 5 minutes after the video has been posted, as normally the Creative Assembly website is a little slow to update, but I'll make sure that I'll have it there. Are you looking forward to any of these changes? It's not long now until the DLC releases. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.